In the warm and lively town of Kafra, there lived a young woman named Lena. Everyone in the town knew her name, not because she was rich or famous, but because her mouth never stopped talking. She was beautiful, confident, and full of life, but her words were sharp like a blade. Wherever she went, people turned their heads, some to listen, others to stay away. From morning to evening, Lena always had something to say. If she walked through the market, she would make comments about the traders. "Ayo, your fish smells like it came from last week," she would laugh loudly. The other women would look at her and shake their heads, whispering, "This girl's tongue will bring her trouble one day." But Lena never cared. She believed her words were just the truth, and she loved the attention they brought. At home, her mother, Mama Fola, worried deeply about her daughter's attitude. Mama Fola was a kind woman who believed that words could heal or hurt, depending on how they were used. Many nights she sat Lena down and said gently, "My daughter, one day your mouth will find its match. You cannot keep throwing words like stones." But Lena always brushed it off with a laugh. "Mama, I'm just honest. People are too sensitive," she would say, flipping her braided hair proudly. Even her friends had grown tired of her teasing. Whenever they met under the big tree to talk, Lena always found something wrong with someone's clothes or voice. "Oh, look at Binta's dress. It looks like it fought with the wind," she would say, and everyone would laugh nervously. Some laughed because they were scared she might mock them next. Others laughed because they didn't want to offend her. But deep inside, everyone wished Lena would learn to keep quiet sometimes. One afternoon, Lena went to the town square where a festival was being prepared. The air was filled with the smell of roasted corn and the sound of drums. Children danced, elders chatted, and merchants called out their goods. Lena, of course, couldn't resist commenting on everything. She told the drummer that his rhythm was too slow, teased a young woman about her headscarf, and even mocked the town announcer for forgetting a few words in his speech. The announcer, an old man named Baba Cato, looked at her and said calmly, "Lena, your words are like fire. Be careful, or one day they will burn you too." She laughed loudly. "Baba Cato, I speak the truth. The truth burns only those who are afraid of it." The crowd murmured. Some smiled at her confidence, while others shook their heads. Later that evening, as Lena walked home, she met her best friend, Amara, on the dusty road. Amara was quiet and gentle, the complete opposite of Lena. She smiled and said softly, "Lena, maybe you should speak less sometimes. People feel hurt when you talk like that." Lena rolled her eyes. "Hurt? I'm just joking. People need to learn to laugh." Amara sighed and said nothing more. She knew that arguing with Lena was like pouring water on a stone. When Lena reached home, her mother was waiting outside, folding clothes. "Lena," she said, "I heard you embarrassed the announcer again." "Embarrassed?" Lena laughed. "Mama, he forgot his own words. I just helped him remember." Mama Fola looked at her daughter and shook her head slowly. "You remind me of your late father," she said softly. "He too had a mouth that could cut. But when trouble came, his tongue could not save him." Lena frowned but didn't reply. She didn't like hearing about her father's mistakes. That night, as the moon rose over Kafra, the town became quiet. But Lena was still awake, lying on her mat and smiling to herself. "People just don't understand me," she whispered. "I'm not mean, I'm just real." She didn't know that outside her house, under the same moon, fate was already preparing to teach her a lesson she would never forget. The next morning, Lena woke early, humming a tune. She decided to visit the riverbank where the women washed clothes. She carried her basket, not because she needed to wash anything, but because she loved to talk. The women at the river groaned when they saw her coming. "Ah, Lena is here. There will be no peace for our ears today," one of them whispered. True to their words, she began right away. "Zara, that soap of yours looks like it's older than your grandmother. Why don't you buy a new one?" she said with a laugh. Zara forced a smile but said nothing. She knew better than to argue. Then Lena turned to another woman, Miriam, who was newly married. "So this is how you wash. No wonder your husband looks tired all the time. You don't even know how to clean his clothes properly." This time, Miriam's eyes filled with tears. The other women scolded Lena, but she only shrugged. "What? I'm just saying what everyone is thinking." When she returned home later that day, her mother greeted her with a tired expression. "Lena, where have you been?" "At the river," she said proudly. "Everyone laughed at my jokes." "Laughed?" Mama Fola repeated. "Or kept quiet because they feared your tongue?" Lena frowned. "Mama, you worry too much." Her mother sighed and looked toward the dusty road that led to town. "I just pray the world will teach you what I cannot." That night, the sound of drums filled the air again. There was news in Kafra. A new teacher had moved into town. People said he was young, wise, and quiet. Some said he could calm even the wildest child with his words. Others said he had traveled to many places and learned great things. When Lena heard the gossip, she smirked. "A teacher? Another man who thinks he knows everything? He'll learn that not everyone bows to his wisdom." Her friend Amara warned her, "Be careful, Lena. This man may be different." But Lena only laughed. "Different or not, he will hear what I have to say." She didn't know it then, but this teacher, this calm and patient stranger, was about to be the very match her mother had warned her about. The wind blew softly that night, carrying the sounds of the town and the whispers of change. Lena sat outside her home, humming and smiling, still believing her words ruled the world. But destiny, as silent as the moon, was already smiling back, ready to humble the girl whose mouth never rested. When the people of Kafra heard that a new man had moved into the small yellow house beside Lena's home, everyone grew curious. The house had been empty for months, its walls fading and its garden dry. But one quiet morning, a cart arrived, carrying wooden boxes, books, and a few plants. A tall young man stepped out, dressed simply in a white shirt and brown trousers. His name was Tund. He greeted everyone with a calm smile, bowing slightly as he spoke. "Good morning," he said softly to those who passed by. His voice was gentle, his eyes kind. The women at the market whispered to each other, "He looks like a good man. Maybe he is a teacher." They were right. Tund had come to Kafra to teach at the village school. From the first day, people liked him. He never raised his voice, even with noisy children. He helped the elders carry heavy baskets and greeted everyone with respect. The children followed him sometimes, asking questions about books and stories, and he answered them with patience. But not everyone was pleased by his calm nature, especially Lena. From her window, Lena watched as Tund planted flowers in front of his house. She crossed her arms and said to her friend Amara, "Look at him, pretending to be peaceful and wise. These quiet men always think they are better than everyone." Amara laughed softly. "Maybe he's just different. Not everyone talks as much as you do." Lena rolled her eyes. "Different? He's boring. I'll bet he can't even speak up for himself." Later that afternoon, she saw Tund sweeping the path in front of his house. She decided to greet him, though not kindly. "Good afternoon, teacher," she said loudly, with a teasing smile. "You must like silence, because you never say anything." Tund looked up, smiled politely, and said, "Good afternoon, Miss Lena. Silence helps me listen better." Then he went back to sweeping. Lena blinked, a little surprised. Most men would have tried to argue with her or flirt, but this one just smiled and continued working. The next day, she saw him again, this time at the market. He was buying fruit from Mama Ao, the fruit seller. "Teacher Tund," Lena called out, walking over with a grin. "Are you planning to eat all that fruit alone? You look too serious for mangoes." He laughed softly. "Maybe you're right," he said. "But even a serious man needs something sweet once in a while." Lena tilted her head, trying to find a reason to tease him again, but his calm tone made it hard. She left with a little frown. "Strange man," she muttered to herself. Days passed, and Tund continued to live quietly. He woke up early, taught at the school, and returned home in the evening. Sometimes, children followed him home, asking questions about their lessons. He never shouted, never complained. He would sit with them under the mango tree and explain things slowly, smiling when they understood. Lena could not stop noticing him. She often found herself looking out her window when he passed by. His calmness began to annoy her more than noise ever could. "How can someone be so quiet all the time?" she said to her mother one day. "Doesn't he ever get angry?" Mama Fola smiled gently. Maybe he has peace inside him. You should try learning from him. Peace. Lena scoffed. I have peace too, Mama, just a louder kind. One afternoon, Lena was walking home from the market when she saw a group of boys teasing an old man who had dropped his bag of yam. She shouted, "Hey! Stop that, you little goats!" The boys froze and ran away. As she bent to help the old man, Tund appeared beside her, helping quietly. "You were very brave," he said calmly. "But maybe shouting was not needed. Sometimes, gentleness works faster." Lena frowned. Gentleness? You think soft words would stop those rude boys? Tund smiled. Maybe not always. But shouting is like wind, it passes quickly and leaves dust behind. Lena didn't reply. For once, she had no clever answer. After that day, she found herself thinking about his words. She tried to convince herself they didn't matter, but somehow, they stayed in her heart. A few evenings later, a group of women gathered near the well, gossiping as usual. When they saw Lena approaching, they smiled nervously. One of them whispered, "Be careful, she might use that sharp tongue again." Lena ignored them and went to fetch her water. But then Tund arrived, carrying 2 empty pots. "Good evening, ladies," he said softly. "May I help?" The women blushed and giggled, impressed by his politeness. Lena rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," she said loudly, "the teacher is helping everyone now. Should we clap for him too?" Everyone fell silent. They looked at her, then at Tund. But Tund only smiled. "You don't need to clap, Miss Lena," he said. "Helping others is not a performance, it's just kindness." Lena froze. For the first time, she felt embarrassed. Her cheeks grew warm. She turned and walked away quickly, her bucket still half full. That night, she sat outside her home, thinking. The air was cool, and the sound of crickets filled the silence. For some reason, that silence felt different, not empty, but peaceful. She realized how quiet Tund always was, not because he had nothing to say, but because he chose when to speak. The next morning, Lena woke early. She saw Tund watering his plants again. She hesitated, then walked over. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning, Miss Lena," he replied, smiling. I wanted to say sorry for what I said yesterday," she said awkwardly. "I talk too much sometimes." Tund smiled kindly. "Words are not the problem," he said. "It's how we use them." Lena nodded slowly. For once, she felt like listening instead of talking. From that day, things began to change between them. She still teased him sometimes, but her words became softer. She started greeting people more kindly, and sometimes she even helped the children who came to learn from him. The town noticed too. "Lena is changing," people whispered. "That teacher must be a blessing." But Lena never said much about it. She still spoke her mind, but now she chose her words with care. And every time she saw Tund's calm smile, she felt something new, a quiet respect, and maybe, just maybe, a little admiration. His silence had done what no one else could. It had softened her heart. And though she would never admit it aloud, Lena often found herself thinking that sometimes, silence speaks louder than any voice ever could. The sun was bright that Saturday morning in Kafra, and the air carried the sound of laughter and children running. Tund, the quiet teacher, had gathered the neighbors under the big mango tree near the school. He wanted to do something different for the community, something fun and meaningful. So he announced a small story contest. "Anyone can join," he said with his usual calm smile. "Tell a story that teaches a lesson. No prizes, just joy and wisdom." People were excited. The women brought stools and mats, the children sat on the ground, and a few men leaned on the tree trunk, curious to hear what everyone had to say. Of course, Lena came too. She could not resist the chance to speak in front of people. "A story contest," she laughed. "I will make them all clap for me." She dressed in her best wrapper, tied her scarf neatly, and walked proudly to the gathering. When she arrived, she made sure everyone saw her. "Move a little," she told one of the women sitting in the front row. "I need space to talk well." Tund smiled when he saw her. "Welcome, Miss Lena," he said. "We're happy you came." "Of course," she said, lifting her chin. Who else can tell stories better than me? The contest began. One by one, the villagers stood up to share their stories. A young boy spoke about a farmer who learned to share his harvest. A woman told a story about a lost cow that found its way home because of kindness. People clapped and laughed. But when Lena's turn came, she stood tall and smiled proudly. My story, she began, is about people who think they are wise but do foolish things. Her story was clever and funny, but she could not resist mocking others as she spoke. She joked about the boy's story, saying, "A cow that found its way home? Maybe the cow was smarter than its owner." Everyone laughed nervously. Then she teased the woman who told her story, and a few people lowered their eyes, uncomfortable. Tund watched quietly, his face calm, though his heart felt a little sad. Lena didn't notice. She finished her story, took a small bow, and said proudly, "Now that's how you tell a real story." The crowd clapped politely, but the laughter had lost its warmth. Tund stood up slowly. "Thank you, Miss Lena," he said gently. "You have a strong voice indeed. Now, I'll tell a short story too." He walked to the front and began speaking softly. "Once," he said, "there was a small bird who loved to sing. Her voice was sweet, and everyone in the forest listened when she sang. But the bird also loved to talk. Too much. She talked about the lion's mane, the elephant's walk, even the snake's hiss. She said, 'I have the best voice. No one can match me.' Soon, the animals stopped talking to her. But the bird didn't care. She kept talking and talking. One day, a storm came. The wind was strong, and the trees shook. The bird tried to warn the others, but when she opened her beak, no sound came out. She had talked so much that she had lost her voice. The storm passed, but the bird never sang again. When he finished, there was silence. The crowd sat quietly, thinking about the story. Then one of the children clapped softly. Soon, everyone joined in. "That was beautiful," someone said. "What a wise story," another added. Tund smiled and looked around the group. "Every voice is a gift," he said gently. "But even the brightest bird must learn when to be quiet." Lena sat in the front row, staring at the ground. Her face felt warm. She wanted to laugh it off, to make a joke, but the words didn't come. For the first time, she had no clever reply. After the contest ended, people went home talking about Tund's story. "That teacher is wise," they said. "His words always carry meaning." Lena walked home slowly. The afternoon sun was fading, and her mother was sitting outside peeling cassava. "You're quiet today," her mother said with a small smile. "Did you lose your voice?" Lena sighed. "Maybe the bird in Tund's story was me, Mama." Her mother looked up, surprised. "You? Why?" "Because she talked too much," Lena said softly. "And she didn't know when to stop." Mama Fola chuckled and said, "Well, maybe it's time that bird rested her tongue a little." That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling. She thought about how she always spoke before thinking. She thought about the faces of the people she had mocked earlier that day, how their smiles had faded, how their eyes had looked hurt. She realized that words, once spoken, could not be taken back. The next morning, Lena went to the well. She saw the woman she had teased during the contest standing there, drawing water. Lena hesitated for a moment, then walked over. "Good morning, Sister Ada," she said softly. The woman looked at her cautiously. "Good morning, Lena." "I'm sorry about what I said yesterday," Lena said quietly. "I shouldn't have mocked your story. It was good. It had a strong message." Ada looked surprised but smiled. "It's all right, Lena. It takes strength to say sorry." For the first time in a long while, Lena felt peace. The words she spoke that morning didn't sting, they soothed. Later that week, she visited the school where Tund taught. The children were outside, drawing pictures in the sand. Tund was sitting under the tree, reading. "Teacher Tund," she said softly. He looked up, smiling. "Miss Lena, I didn't expect to see you here." "I came to thank you," she said, "for the story about the bird. It made me think." He nodded gently. "I'm glad. Stories are like mirrors. They show us something we need to see." Lena smiled faintly. Maybe I should learn how to tell stories that heal, not hurt. That, Tun said kindly, would make you the best storyteller in Kafra. Lena laughed, not loudly, but softly, almost shyly. She helped the children with their drawings, showing them how to make birds, trees, and stars. For once, she didn't need to be the loudest person in the room. She just needed to listen, laugh, and share kindness. That evening, when she walked home, the sky was painted with orange and gold. She could hear children in the distance still talking about the bird in Tun's story. As she smiled to herself, Lena thought quietly, maybe silence isn't weakness after all. Maybe it's the beginning of wisdom. From that day on, people noticed a change. Lena still spoke, but her words carried warmth instead of fire. Her laughter sounded softer, and her tongue, once sharp, became gentle. And whenever someone asked what had changed her, she would simply say, "A teacher once told a story about a bird that talked too much. I listened." The days in Kafra grew warmer as the rains began to fade. Markets filled with bright fruits and busy voices, and in the middle of that noise, one voice had grown softer, Lena's. It had been weeks since the story contest, but the tale of the talkative bird still echoed in her heart. Something inside her had changed quietly, like the slow opening of a flower after rain. People in the town began to notice. At the market, where Lena used to shout the loudest, she now greeted people with warmth. When Mama Ao, the fruit seller, overcharged her for oranges, Lena only smiled and said, "It's fine, Mama. Keep the change." The other buyers stared in surprise. One of them whispered, "Did she just say that? Is this the same Lena?" Even her close friends were puzzled. One morning, she sat with Amara and two other women under the tree near the tailor's shop. They were gossiping about a neighbor who had argued with her husband. Lena sat quietly, listening. Then Amara looked at her and laughed. "You're so quiet today, Lena. Has the bird in you lost her voice?" Lena smiled softly. "No," she said. "The bird just learned when to sing and when to stay still." The women laughed, but Amara looked at her curiously. "You're not joking, are you?" Lena shook her head. "No, my friend. I used to think words made me powerful. But now I see that words can also wound. It's better to speak peace than to win arguments." That evening, as she walked home, she saw two children fighting over a small ball in the street. She ran to them, pulled them apart gently, and said, "Listen to me. When you fight, no one wins. If you share, both of you can play and laugh." The boys looked at each other, then at her. Slowly, one of them pushed the ball toward the other. "Here," he said shyly. Lena smiled and patted their heads. "Good boys," she said. "That's how you grow hearts big enough to fit joy." When she reached home, her mother noticed her calm smile and said, "You look peaceful, my daughter. I haven't seen you angry in a long time." Lena laughed softly. "Maybe I was always angry because I talked too much, Mama. I never listened to my own words." Mama Fola smiled proudly. "I always told you, the tongue can be a friend or a fire. I'm happy you've learned the difference." The next Sunday at church, the pastor asked if anyone would like to share something with the congregation. Before, Lena would have stood up quickly, eager to speak and show her cleverness. But this time, she waited. She only raised her hand when no one else did. She walked to the front slowly, her voice calm and steady. "There was a time I thought talking made me strong," she began. "I said things that hurt people. I laughed at others to make myself feel better. But then I met someone who taught me that silence can be strength too, because it helps us listen." The church was quiet. People who once rolled their eyes at her now listened with respect. "If our words can make others cry," Lena continued, "then our words can also make them smile. I choose the second kind now." When she finished, the pastor nodded and said, "Wisdom often comes from lessons we didn't expect." After that day, people began to see her differently. They stopped calling her the loud one and started calling her the gentle one. Even the children in the street began greeting her with smiles. "Good morning, Sister Lena," they called out. She always waved back and said, "Good morning, my little stars." One afternoon, she met Tund again. He was walking home from school, a pile of books in his hand. When he saw her, he smiled. "You've been quiet lately, Miss Lena." The town feels different, calmer. Lena laughed softly. Maybe that's because the troublemaker retired. Tund chuckled. I don't think she retired. I think she grew wiser. She looked at him seriously. I used to think I was the smartest person in Kafra. But you taught me something without raising your voice once. Tund nodded. Sometimes silence does what noise cannot. They walked together through the narrow path lined with flowers he had planted months ago. The air smelled sweet. You know, Lena said, I used to think people respected me because I spoke boldly. Now I see they respect me more when I speak kindly. That's because kindness is a stronger voice, Tund said with a gentle smile. Over the next few weeks, Lena began visiting the school often. She helped the children read and taught them small lessons about good behavior. She even started a small group called Words That Heal, where people came every weekend to share encouraging stories instead of gossip. At first, only a few women attended, but soon, more joined. The group became a place where people could talk freely, not to hurt, but to heal. Lena would often say, we can't stop talking, but we can choose how we talk. One day, as the sun was setting, Amara came to her and said, You've really changed, Lena. The whole town sees it. But how did you do it? Lena smiled, her eyes shining softly in the orange light. It wasn't easy. I had to learn to hold my tongue when I wanted to fight back. I had to learn to listen when I wanted to shout. And most of all, I had to forgive myself for the words I couldn't take back. Amara nodded slowly. You sound like a teacher now. Lena laughed. Maybe I learned from one. That night, as she sat outside her house, the stars twinkled above her, and the wind whispered through the trees. She thought of how far she had come, from the loud, proud woman who mocked others to someone who used words to lift hearts. Her neighbors no longer feared her sharp tongue. Instead, they came to her for advice. Her mother often said proudly, My daughter's words now bring peace instead of trouble. And sometimes, when Lena walked past the mango tree where Tund once told his story, she smiled quietly and whispered, The bird learned, teacher. She finally learned. The next morning, the children from the school ran past her house, laughing and calling her name. Sister Lena, come tell us a story. She stood, smiling. All right, she said. But this time, it will be a story about how listening makes us wiser. As she walked with them toward the tree, her laughter echoed softly, not loud and proud as before, but warm and gentle, like a song sung with love. And in the quiet heart of Kafra, everyone knew that the loud girl had truly changed, not by losing her voice, but by learning to use it for good. The morning sun rose gently over Kafra, casting a golden glow over the town. Today was not like any other day. The townspeople gathered near the big mango tree in the center of the village to bid farewell to Tund, the quiet teacher who had come months ago. Word had spread that he was leaving to teach in another town, and everyone wanted to see him one last time. Children ran around, their laughter ringing through the air, while women arranged mats and baskets of fruits for the small farewell gathering. The elders leaned on walking sticks, and a few young men carried water and chairs for the guests. Everyone was excited, but at the same time, there was a quiet sadness. Tund had touched many hearts in the town, and people already missed his calm presence. Lena stood near the front, her hands clasped in front of her. She had come early, wearing her favorite green wrapper, her hair neatly braided. She felt a strange mix of emotions, happiness for the man she respected and a little sadness because she had grown used to seeing him every day. When Tund arrived, he carried a small bag and a few books. His calm smile never left his face, even as the crowd clapped and called out greetings. Good morning, everyone, he said softly. I will miss you all, but the work continues, and life must move forward. The children ran to him first, hugging his legs and asking if he would come back soon. He knelt down, hugged them gently, and promised, I will return whenever I can. Keep learning, and always be kind to one another. Then it was time for the adults to speak. One by one, they stood up, giving small speeches of gratitude. They talked about the lessons he had taught, the respect he had shown, and the patience he had shared. The crowd clapped after each speaker, smiling and nodding. Finally, Lena felt her heart tighten. It was her turn. She walked to the front, her steps slow but steady. The entire crowd watched, curious about what she would say. Lena cleared her throat, feeling a small lump in her throat. She looked at Tund, and for a moment, the memories of the past months flashed in her mind. The story contest, the quiet lessons, the way he had never argued when she teased him, and the way he had taught her to speak wisely. She raised her voice, but it was calm and steady this time. "Once my mouth was my enemy," she began. "I spoke without thinking. I laughed at others, mocked my friends, and even hurt people I cared about. I thought I was clever, but I only made trouble for myself and for others." The crowd grew quiet, listening carefully. Lena took a deep breath. "Then one day, a wise man came into my life. He never shouted. He never forced me to listen. But his calm words, his patience, and his silence taught me something important, that sometimes silence can be stronger than pride. That man is Tund." There was a pause. The villagers looked at her in surprise. They had seen Lena as the loud and clever girl of the town, but now her words carried depth and humility. People whispered among themselves, impressed by the change they were witnessing. Tund smiled softly, looking at her with gentle eyes. "Now you have truly found your voice," he said. Lena laughed softly, a warm sound that seemed to wrap around everyone listening. "Yes," she replied, "because I finally met my match." The crowd clapped, some even cheering. The children jumped with excitement, and her friends, Amara included, looked at her with wide eyes, amazed at the transformation. 4 months, they had seen her change, but hearing her words today made it real. After the speeches, Tund spoke briefly. "Remember," he said, "the words we speak can build or break. Choose them wisely. Listen more than you talk, and the world will be a better place." Lena nodded, remembering the story of the bird that lost its voice, the lessons under the mango tree, and the countless times he had shown her patience. She felt gratitude fill her heart. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but Lena stayed near Tund for a moment. "I will miss you," she said quietly. Tund bent slightly and smiled. "And I will miss you too, Lena. But I see now that your voice is strong in a different way. Use it to help others, as you have already begun." She nodded, feeling a new sense of purpose. The loud girl of Kafra had become someone who could speak wisely, who could listen, and who could teach kindness simply with her words and actions. As Tund walked toward the cart that would take him to the next town, Lena waved. The wind gently blew through her hair, and for the first time, she felt peaceful. She had met her match, learned from him, and grown into someone she could be proud of. The sun shone brightly over Kafra, casting golden light on the faces of the villagers. Children ran and laughed, women smiled, and even the elders looked hopeful. Lena walked back home slowly, thinking of the lessons she had learned, the stories she would tell, and the life she would live from that day forward, a life guided by kindness, thoughtfulness, and words that healed rather than hurt. From that day on, when people spoke of Lena, they no longer called her loud or clever. They said, "She is the girl who learned to listen, who learned to speak with care, and who found her match in a wise man." And in the heart of Kafra, the story of the stubborn girl who once ran her mouth too much became a tale of growth, humility, and the quiet power of wisdom.